We want to thank our guest, Mark Wolverton from SPE Plastivan, and all who are registered. Today's presentation will introduce exciting career paths in our plastic injection molding industry. We encourage verbal questions throughout the presentation or by the chat window. This presentation will be recorded and shared with everyone at the end. Next slide, please. My name is Rich O'Brien. I joined the Bales team 27 years ago and enjoy helping clients get the most out of their plastic injection tooling. I will monitor the chat window during today's presentation. And now it's my pleasure to hand it over to my colleague and one of today's speakers, Rich Wozniak.
Thank you, Rich. My name is Rich Wozniak. I've been with Bales a little over 6 years, going on 7. I've been in manufacturing 30 plus years. I started out in a tool room setting as a machinist, moved into the CNCs and then the wire EDM, actually a sinker EDM. And then I became a mold maker. I've ran a couple of different molding facilities, and now I do technical sales, help our customers in the manufacturing industry problem solve. Manufacturing's been good to me. It's been a good life for me, and I encourage folks to inquire about what is out there in manufacturing. Now I'm going to introduce to my good friend Mark here, who's going to be presenting with me today.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Riches. It's great to be here, and I really appreciate the time to talk about Plastivan and how it ties into manufacturing and Manufacturing Day, Manufacturing Week. My career, 45 years, was in applications development and technical service, mostly with resin companies. I was a senior executive with a couple of Fortune 500 companies for a little while, involved in programs like Snakelight, involved in some of the most every printer and calculator and computer that was developed in the 80s. A couple of aircraft have parts that I worked on. Some of those I still can't talk about. There are a lot of things in my life, automotive, packaging, that I've been in. I've not been directly a manufacturer. I've been in manufacturing support, but I can see the value in manufacturing. We'll talk about that in a minute, and have hopefully contributed to it. I'm in the process of paying back a little bit as an educator with Plastivan. Plastivan is the outreach from SPE Foundation, focused on middle and high school students and trying to get them to understand that plastics are perhaps not the evil empire. The plastics really are indeed ubiquitous. They're everywhere in our lives. In my career, I've typically had 2 questions, one of which is, I've got a widget, how am I going to make it, and what material do I make it from? And the other one is a little less favorable. As a material supplier, I would get the question, what to do to the material that is not running today? So we had all those kinds of things. Education-wise, my Bachelor of Science degree is from Material Science from Drexel University, which is a co-op school. So in 5 years, I actually spent 24 months in an industry situation, whether it was a lab or a manufacturing environment, an oil refinery, to get a sense of what was going on in that. And I really recommend that course of action to people. So, Rich?
Let's move on to the next slide. Let's get this rolling here today. So basically, why have Manufacturing Day? Well, you know what, manufacturing, it creates value to stuff we want. Just think about anything in the world today has to be manufactured, whether it be plastic, metals, or whatever it may be. You know, and you look at the career path today in manufacturing, it's no longer the down and dirty, situation. I mean, when I started my career 30 years ago, if a molding machine was leaking oil, that was norm. Well, now today with everything that's electric and, processed properly, everything is ran typically with a computer today. Manufacturing professionals typically don't need a 2-year degree to get yourself started, depending on where you want to go in the field. You're looking at, maybe you want to start, like prime example here, we have rackers. You can get started. Or like in my career, when I started out in a machine shop, you're just cutting steel. Or you can move on, get that 2-year degree, 2-year certificate, or whatever it may be, and now advance your career. And then you can even take it to the next level. And a lot of employers these days, to make things attractive, offer to pay for tuition reimbursement. There are different forms of scholarships out there. Mark will talk about some of those a little bit later. But yeah, let's move on to the next slide.
No sound. Okay. Oops.
What happened there?
Don't know.
Yeah, we'll touch base on that too.
Apologize for no
Right.
sound. We can offer to send that video out to them.
Or we can replay it at the end.
He's got the chat out, so does Rich. Figuring out what deal with it. If it's not no sound, it's one more in the back.
Right.
We apologize. I see that we had no sound on that video. When we get a chance to figure out what happened, we will be able to replay it probably at the end of the seminar and go from there. But to recap what Rich played for me when we played it in rehearsal, these people are discussing their opportunities in the manufacturing environment here at Bales. They're looking at being self-starters, running their own days, working a schedule, and finding the satisfaction in completing their activities on a day-to-day basis. I have to say that having walked through the manufacturing environments here at Bales for a manufacturing entity, it is clean. Okay, you can walk out there. I could walk out there in a sports jacket and feel comfortable all day long.
Well, we appreciate that, Mark. We take pride on our safety and the cleanliness that we have here. Even though we are a plater, it is a relatively nice and clean shop.
It's a great and clean shop. And I can tell you back in the early days of my career, when we talk about dark and dirty, I'd be in safety shoes and my jacket because that's what we wore in the 70s and 80s when we went into a customer and looking for a place to hang my jacket and going through about 6 a year because they get covered in oil, going through safety shoes that'd be covered in oil. It was not any fun. But Plastivan contributes considerably to the manufacturing and helping understand what the manufacturing life is for people today. We are the educational outreach from the Society of Plastics Engineers Foundation. Our focus is help educating the youth in the responsibilities, applications, technologies, and chemistry and history of plastics items. And plastics comes from the Greek word plastiko. And we knew about, as human beings, we knew about forming in ancient Greece and even more ancient civilizations. Actually, the word for plastic comes from the Greek word plastikos, which means to shape or to form or to mold. This spoon, which looks like a plastic spoon as we would think of it today, is plastic, but it is a natural polymer made from water buffalo horn. And we've known about this technology for tens of thousands of years and carried it through in today's thermoforming materials. In the Plastivan program, we talk about these kinds of materials, these kinds of applications, and we get some hands-on experiments to teach the unique properties of the plastics. And plastics are everywhere. We have to be very responsible with them. We work with the teachers and sponsors to schedule the day-long interaction for the self-contained learning experience. Next.
Now we're just going to jump into some career paths in the plastic manufacturing and in manufacturing in general, touch base on a few different avenues. And Mark and I were going to jump back and forth, kind of throw our 2 cents into just a handful of careers, opportunities that are out there. I mean, these are just going to be some subcategories. You can really dive deep into some of the, industries or career paths and, form your own path. And it's an excellent opportunity to get into. Next. So starting out, the entrepreneur. So how do we come up with a spoon like that?
Well, somebody's got an idea. Okay, they say, I want to make a device. Okay, and whether that device would be a spoon, a clip, it might even be a water bottle and a water bottle closure. It could be a container for hand lotion or personal care devices or products. It could even be something simple, more complicated, like an air pump. So all of these parts need some concept. And the entrepreneur is typically the person who is driving the idea behind it. So you need people to balance out. If you think of a device as a table that has legs which support the flat surface of the table, you want that table to be level, not tipped or poor or unbalanced and wobble. So if you think of the 4 legs of that table as design, materials, manufacturing, and mold in the many cases of a plastic part, then you need skills in those areas to balance it. And not all of those skills are available in any one person. Typically, it requires a team to do this. So when you build your career as an entrepreneur, you say, okay, I'll put the money behind this. I really believe in this. It will work for me and I will make it work. Then you need people that can help you in these other areas of the career paths. You need people that understand management, okay, how to get things done, how to get people to do things. You need operators, people that understand how the machines and the processes work and how to adjust them. We've all heard the joke about the guy that retired and his boss called him back one day and said, I need some help. And he said, sure. And said, send me a bill. The bill was very, very large. The boss said, you need to help me understand this bill. And he said, okay, $1 to turn a screw, $10,000 to know which way and how much to turn that screw.
Exactly. And then that leads into, like Mark had spoken about, design. I mean, it's important, to design, there's many different design, avenues you can go down in regards to, a career path. Mold making, that's kind of my background, operations management, mold making. Mold making can be many different subcategories. You've got, like I stated earlier, you've got a machinist, you've got a mold maker, you've got an EDM guy, you got a wire guy, you got a polisher. What we do here, we polish in-house. Secondary operations to the mold making industry, you're looking at, hey, that part needs to be textured. Just look in your car. Everything is textured in there, and then to protect the texture or protect the molds itself, you may need some plating. But then it all goes back to, the actual manufacturing of plastic and the science behind it and where it leads you.
Yeah, the science, of course, is what taught me. I took my degree in engineering because I thought I wanted to make things. I didn't realize I was going to end up in materials engineering until I watched steel companies going bankrupt. And I said, maybe I need some extra alternatives earlier on. Some of the science pieces of plastics include taking advantage of some unique properties. For instance, this is a balloon. Okay, when we take the balloon, it's relaxed and opaque, and then we blow it up and stretch it. It becomes translucent around what I'll call the equator, and remains opaque at the poles, here at the knot, and up at the point. So, Rich, we practiced this a little earlier. So
oh, you're going to put me on the spot, are you?
You and I are going to put each other on the spot.
Geez,
we're going to run a skewer.
This is going to get crazy.
We're going to run a skewer through each of these balloons. Rich will do his, and I'll do mine. And, of course, at this point with the kids, I'll say, what's the bet that we're going to be able to do this. And so what we do is down here where it's relaxed, we spin and twist and press, and then we come out next to the dimple and we spin and twist and press. And all of a sudden, there we are. The balloon is through the skewer.
I was a little shaky. I was afraid I was going to pop this thing. Let me tell you, the first experiment went well. Well, first it worked. I've seen it many times. Mark, this is his tool. This is an excellent explanation of the plastics itself. And I'm still shaking because I thought for sure it was going to pop on TV. Here we go. Perfect, Mark. We survived.
We survived. And the reason this works is what we tell the kids in the science piece of our presentation of Plastivan is that the molecules are these long entangled chains, okay, where each bead represents a monomer. We talk about the science of that with the kids. It's one of the reasons I wear the Mardi Gras beads around my neck when I go into the class. It's like, first of all, it gets the kids' attention because they're looking at what's this crazy old white man going to tell us about today? And then the other thing is going to be, these are the models of what polymers look like. They're long chains. And speaking of models, the reason that it continues to work for Rich is that this is a model of the entangled molecules in the balloon. And consequently, what we did is we found a way between all those molecule strands so that the skewer could pass. And that's why we spin it and press it rather than just poke it. So that's part of the science. These are some of the things that you say, okay, well, that's kind of a cool party trick. How does it tie into manufacturing? Guess what? Most of what we do in polymers and manufacturing ties into manipulating the properties and dealing with them.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, and then if you look at it too, I mean, there are other career paths, and it's not only for plastics, but in actually manufacturing itself. You've got to have a good maintenance team. You've got to have a maintenance guy. You've got to have technicians. You've got to have custodians. I mean, you can start anywhere. And most companies, the larger companies, have career paths for folks once they get in the door. I know when I first started my career, I actually started as a security guard. And then next thing you know, I was asked, you know what, you can make a lot more money if you go into the tool room. And, I jumped on it. And here we are today. I utilized my manufacturing background to help our customers, get desired results. Quality, you've got to have a good part. It goes back to when I go out to dinner or a fast food place with my wife, and she always makes fun of me because I'll look at the fork and I'll look for the plastic flash around the outside. And it's like, did they get this at the Dollar Tree or did they get this at Macy's? And you can tell the difference how the thing is manufactured. Quality is important to make sure that the customer is getting the correct part all the time, every time. Post-processing, I mean, there's a lot of avenues folks can go down there too. A lot of stuff is automated, but how does it get automated? Somebody's got to program them PLCs. Somebody's got to have that knowledge to make sure that, hey, this is running exactly right, timed right. You have an end of arm tooling coming into a mold. You've got to make sure it lines up right. The last thing you want is, a $100,000 mold, and now that robot just crashed into it because we didn't line it up right. And it's just something that, it's another career path in this industry or even in manufacturing, cars, automotive. You look at the Ford plants and stuff like that. Everything is automated. It comes down the line, and the human aspect is very little, but it's important, and it's important that you understand that there is many different opportunities out there for folks in manufacturing.
Hey, Rich?
Even we left out two. I just realized looking at the bullet points, we left out two career paths.
We did?
Yeah, one in sales.
Oh, yeah.
Because unless somebody's out there selling it, nobody's making it. Okay. And
Hey, Rich?
If it's being made, it needs to be sold.
Hold on. Rich has yes.
Yeah, we've got a question about like that fork you were talking about. Now, what makes the fork smooth or rough?
Well, what typically happens is, if you're using the proper steel for one, and for two, it depends on how your processing is. Is this tool old and now you've got some worn edges and now you're packing that part out and now you may get that flashed around there. So it's ideally keeping up your tooling, making sure you're using the proper materials, making sure that you're inspecting the part before it goes out the door so that when you go to bite into that chicken nugget, you're using a fork, it doesn't scrape the side of your lip. So it's important that those things are met. However, you still get some of them that Their quality standards may be a little bit down. It may have passed their quality standards, but me as a plastic professional, and I'm sure Mark would do the same thing, that, I'm not going to take a bite out of my food if I see a fork like that, let me tell you.
And the other thing that happens, it could even be a brand new mold, okay, but it could be set in the press incorrectly. It could be the wrong set of processing conditions. Pressure's too high, injection rate's too high or too low. It could be trapped. It could be insufficiently vented. There are so many different things that go into processing, and it takes the skills and the critical thinking to look at it and say, okay, what do we do about these that are not quite right? And also it takes somebody with a lot of pride in his or her work, okay, because it's going to go out, it's going to touch somebody down the road. So these are all part and parcel of how we get good parts. I mean, if you look at your car, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into making the car interior and exterior parts to a standard to have the quality and the fit and finish that we as consumers demand. And so it takes skilled processing professionals to have those things turn out right. Which brings us to the other career that we didn't mention, which is the technical service and support. So the sales guy or girl goes out and gets the job and comes back with a purchase order, and they say, okay, we're done. Okay, right? So now what do we do?
Easy?
Is it that easy? It is that easy.
It's just that easy.
They tell us that. Okay, but now the next piece is to answer your question, Rich, that why are these parts not running the way they should? And that's where roles like technical service and support come in, where we have the opportunity to go into the factories on a contracted consulting type basis to say, let's look at what we can do here. And then, of course, there's the more proactive role in the sense of what do we want to do to develop the science, the technology, the education with our clients and operators so that they're prepared to answer these questions on their own. So all of these tie into manufacturing. It's a big, big area for help.
Yeah, back to the fork. I mean, your setup technician, he puts in that mold, and like Mark had alluded to earlier, pressures and everything else that's involved in the molding process itself. Maybe some folks even have a trimmer. Maybe they've built in the flash to make sure that you come around and smooth those edges. Some folks they'll have it where it drops it automation into a plate. It goes around. It has this little knife blade or decal or whatever it may be, and it trims those parts. And that's important. Everything is important in manufacturing. Material handling, your shipping guy, your receiving guy, moving resins from one part of the facility to the next, moving completed parts, moving components that go with those parts. It just doesn't sit with plastic industry, but manufacturing in general.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next slide.
Plastivan is very heavily invested in the manufacturing and science arenas. It's what we do. What we're trying to do is encourage these upcoming generations to look at careers in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing, and mathematics, as well as arts. It all ties in together. We have a tremendous emerging workforce that's coming out. They're interested. They want to do things. They don't necessarily want to sit around all day playing on their phones. And a lot of people don't understand exactly how this ties in. In terms of some of the outreach activities, we've been working as Plastivan with an outreach group in the Detroit inner city area called Ecotech Labs, which is what's the word I'm looking for? It requires an audition, if you will, to be part of the lab, and it requires real investment on part of the youth in order to prepare. And they're doing some science that is, even to me as a practicing engineer, but they're doing some science, technology, manufacturing development work that is just unbelievable for what teenagers would be pulling out today. We're extending this also into a series of after-school STEM clubs, both in Detroit and Lansing, as well as in Dallas, Texas, working with the Girl Scouts down there. So manufacturing and plastics and beyond plastics manufacturing all tie together. In the next slide, we talk about some of the parts and processes that we're making. There are any number of processes, there are 6, 7 specific ones that we can think about. We can talk about thermoforming. okay, where we would take and reshape a horn by heating it and manipulating it into the spoon. That led to the technology of thermoforming today. We could talk about injection molding, where we could make these spoons, we could make those forks in high capacity, high cavity molds. It's one of the ways that we make the caps for our water bottles that we use today. We can have extrusion. So if anybody's ever handled any wire, or if you've ever looked at any kind of a conduit or any other kinds of hollow profile, might be a long hollow profile, it might be made by extrusion. If you're looking at making the bottle part of our water bottle, you're looking at a blow molding process, okay? And there's a couple of different ways to make these blow molded process. If you're looking at a car, if you have an enthusiasm for cars and you look down below, there's a boot that covers the continuous velocity joint, the CV joint in your car. That's made by blow molding. Hollow parts can also be made by rotomolding. So if anybody has a canoe or a kayak or big pieces, or even one that was really, really cool, if you've taken your kids to the bowling alley and they have the dragon set up for the youth that you put at the end of the alley and the kid loads the bowling ball into the top and pushes it over, that's made by rotomolding. And then really, really coming along strong in the last 2 years that I have seen is the additive manufacturing environment, also called 3D printing, where instead of having a mold, we are direct depositing the molten plastic onto a surface and a device in order to raise the complete part it up. It's coming along very strong. It was looked at IMTS and NPE a few years ago, where they were actually 3D printing the body for an AC Cobra replica, and then drove it off the show floor at the end of the show.
That's crazy.
So we've done those kinds of things, but that gets you a sense that it's no longer just a small part like a paperclip, or a closure. Those are incredibly important, but then they can do large scale parts as well today too. And it takes the skills and the understanding of the manufacturing process to make these happen.
And not only that, I mean, you're looking at all these different ways to mold. I mean, and now you take all of the aspects in manufacturing, and every one of these subcategories, you can go into the same kind of career path, but maybe take a little spin here or take a spin there. So it's just important to find what you're interested in and use the passion that's out there and just, make something. It's always great to see something, especially if you're in molding, a part that you've made and you see it in the store or you see it on a car or something like that. It is a great thing to have pride in knowing that you've helped manufacture that part for that car or whatever. I just visited a customer who does interior doors for a big automotive company, and it was impressive to see all the components put together. And and the guy that was explaining it to me, you could tell he's been in manufacturing forever. The pride he took in what he has accomplished with this company and what the company has accomplished with their quality, with the way they delivered their parts, and everything from top to bottom, from upper management down to the guy that sweeps the floor, is important to manufacturing. And we have to remember that manufacturing is key in the USA. Next slide.
So what we can do is talk a little bit about how would we build a career in plastics. Okay, you say, okay, well, these opportunities are out there, but I can go out and I can get a job, and a job is a job. A career is something that you can enjoy doing, and if you enjoy what you're doing, you never work a day in your life.
That's perfect. Let's move on to that next slide.
Okay. What's it take to build a career? The skills. There's nothing in here that says mathematics. Okay. In manufacturing, there needs to be a desire to make stuff. I buried the lead a little bit on this slide. Okay, okay.
That's all right. We'll let you slide. I mean, you showed me. Look, my balloon is still intact with the stick in it. This is crazy stuff, but Mark knows his stuff.
So to be successful in manufacturing, you want to make something. Okay, but to really contribute as part of the team and pull it around, one, you've got to be a little bit of a team player. That's not necessarily means that you can't be a lone wolf. There's a need for those too, but you're going to be a lone wolf as part of a team. You're going to have a skill set that somebody wants to take advantage of in order to get the device to work. You need to be able to think critically. Okay. If I'm looking at a part, and I don't care whether it's a closure or a skewer or a bead or, car interior parts, you need to look at it and you need to think through the process. And you don't have to be a degreed engineer to do this, or a scientist. You just need to be able to say, how did this happen and how does it? You sort of have to be enthusiastic. Okay. Not over the top. People would accuse me of being a little bit over the top, but that's okay. But
You're passionate.
You need to be passionate. You need to have some enthusiasm. You say, okay, alarm clock went off at 6 o'clock. Yeah, that was a long day yesterday, or I'm going in at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I'm working the second shift. But you know what? I've had a good day so far. I'm going to have a little bit more fun with this today. And the whole principle in this, as well as anywhere, is to get up, get dressed, and show up. Okay, that's the whole part that we have in absolutely every piece of making value in our society today.
Yeah, it's key to make sure that the passion's there. Some folks just go through the motions, but I've had a pretty successful career, I think. Just some speaking from experience. Yeah, there's been some tough times there, but you bounce back and you try to figure out your fit in this whole manufacturing thing. And sometimes you take that road. Maybe it might be a dead end on one end, but guess what? It might open a new avenue for you. And you'll always got to be thinking that I'm going to be the best person I can be on a daily basis so that the world is better because I help make something that we can use on a daily basis. Now let's jump to that next slide.
Sure. Okay, so when we talk about how people might become interested in manufacturing, first of all, you might have a friend, a neighbor, somebody that's involved in the manufacturing environment. In Detroit, we have the relationship with the Society of Plastics Engineers Detroit chapter and the automotive division, as well as the Ecotech. And we sponsor a number of hands-on plastic and STEM events. It's not limited just to Detroit. We would work with sponsors elsewhere in the country to help put these STEM events together. There's an SPE Polymer Science Summer Program. I don't know much about that. We do provide certain stipends for middle and high school research, especially through the principle of science fairs. We typically, as chapters, local chapters, run a Wonders of Plastics essay contest focused at, let's say, early high school students. So they talk about what plastics mean to them, both critically and perhaps positively in that. We will sponsor and support, and many people like Bales will actually host a field trip so that if the teacher can get permission, has the interest, we'll bring the kids in and let them see what the manufacturing environment looks like. And not just Bales, but there are others that we work with that will do that. And also, if you're going to college, whether it's a 2-year program or a 4-year program, there is scholarship assistance. Okay, we do provide a massive amount of scholarship assistance every year.
Yeah, let's move on to that next slide. It'll go into more detail on what Mark was just talking about. Education, I mean, like we stated earlier, I mean, you really right out of high school, and if you're interested in getting in the field, especially here, plating, we have a good core management group here who will groom and, help folks advance their career path here at Bales. And then also, any other places you go, a lot of places, they make it attractive now in manufacturing to help with tuition reimbursement. Not everybody does it, but it definitely does help. And you get in somewhere and you're 18, 19 years old, not sure what you want to do. And now, hey, I'd like kind of manufacturing a spoon or a chip clip, whatever it may be. And now, you know what? I just don't want to be the guy that's just pushing the button, operating the machine and pulling the parts off. I want to be more into the thinking end of it, the design end, the programming, whatever it may be, that you can guide your own path. And, preparation is excellent, in, kind of looking at your long-term career goals. And, I know Mark knows a lot of people in the industry. So do I. We've been in plastics, it seems like forever. Well, it is kind of forever, but it's the path we took, and it's everywhere. Plastics is everywhere. Mark made a comment earlier about, the largest, one of the top.
It's in the top 10 communities, manufacturing communities in the United States.
Yeah, so you just imagine that, top 10% of who hires people is plastic related. That's huge. I mean, that's behind like the government and a few other handful of people, but that's that there's going to be work out there in manufacturing. Unfortunately, some places you go, they have management that just doesn't know what the hell they're doing, and they go belly up, or program ends or something like that. But if you have that solid background, it definitely can take you many different places, and it's just a matter of getting your foot in there and giving it a try. Also, mentorships and networking; those are huge. I know because locally here we deal a lot with the AMBA and the TMA and those folks. They're all trying to groom the young folks in more of the machining end of it. But there are other different avenues that you can take just to move your career along the line, and you just have to have that want and drive to be that person that shows up every day and does a good job.
And then, of course, we all look at it and say the big topic in the politics these days is paying back student loans. Okay, one of the topics. Okay, the good news is that even coming out of high school and starting to work, well, most companies will provide some level of support if you're going to take it on. Now, you might need to earn a B or better, which means you're going to have to work at it. But those are things that are available there. There are scholarships and there are other forms of support, including apprenticeships available. I was up at a community technical college last April, and out of the 30 people in this year's program, they had 37 job offers already on the table, and they were only 8 months into their program of 15.
That's perfect. Let's move on to that next slide.
So pretty much what we want to do is talk about the positive plastics education through the SPE. We are looking strongly at emerging workforce support. We have scholarships and mentors that would be happy to work with you, both in engineering schools and science schools, and in the 2-year program for those that understand how to make machines run and actually get their hands into the machine.
Next slide.
Hey, Mark.
Sir.
How would one sign up, to get a scholarship? What is the process? Is it pretty in depth, or?
Well, like anything else, if you're looking for a scholarship, you'd have to do the FAFSA. Okay, that's that whole government thing. But then on the website www.4spe.org, there are links to the various scholarships that are available for the programs. SPE Foundation, I saw the numbers and I've forgotten them, but we had some 50 scholarships last year, my best memory, between $3,000 and $10,000 given away. So we are doing an awful lot through SPE. Certain companies have their own scholarship programs that we get tied into, and we can relay that there. My honor society, the Plastic Pioneers, also administers about $25,000 of scholarship and support for education through the SPE Foundation. So there's a substantial amount, but start with the FAFSA and then start with SPE.org, 4SPE.org, the number 4SPE.org, and then I'm embarrassed to say this, but probably 35% of the scholarship money that is available in the plastics community has gone unclaimed and unawarded because we haven't had any applicants.
Yeah, that's
which is terrifying.
That's sad.
And these career paths, they're not isolated to the Midwest, right? I mean,
no, international. As a matter of fact, there are some international scholarships that have gone on. So it's a national program.
All right, let's jump to the next slide, and So some of the market trends out there, for plastic, what they're looking for is, everybody wants it faster. That's a key. That's a given. The faster, the more you can make, the more dollars they can get in the door, and then doing it cost effectively, and then doing it cost effectively takes the mind of, people, just to get out there, clinically think like we talked about earlier, and just put your heads together and then, make sure that you're manufacturing the best part cost effectively, the quickest, and with, no disregard to quality, because quality is important. Some of the factors behind the market growth, you're always looking at right now, since COVID, medical has been booming for the most part. Kind of tapered off in certain segments of that a little bit recently, but for the most part, you're looking at the medical industry, and you can just imagine, from the face mask to little, valves and whatever swabs, whatever. It's just, there is so many different things that, the plastic thermometer that you have at home, how is that made? Just start thinking of, okay, here we are. Or that little plastic cup that gives you, okay, I need 2 milliliters of NyQuil to make me sleep tonight. So, you've got to look at those types of things, and the bottle itself. You also got to look at too, everybody has this, it's plastic. So we're always making phones. So if you can get yourself into a company that's there, lightweight plastics for automotive, you're also looking at, I remember back in the day when you would make, you look at a car and everything inside the engine was steel. Well, guess what? Most of the stuff now is plastic, and it's engineered resins and engineered processes. And those are all career paths that you can go down. It's an excellent thought that, hey, I can take this piece, this valve body or whatever it may be, and it was steel and now it's plastic, whatever it may be.
Those are all areas that we're working in, with injection molding, thermoforming, any of the other processing technologies that need to be done. Talk about entrepreneurship. One of my private clients is developing a device. Actually, we're public with it. It's Roddy Medical. They're making a device that is intended to replace adhesive tape in the patient care environment, to hold the tubes and the wires and the other stuff that's associated with a critical care patient in place, and prevent dislocation of an IV needle, prevent disconnecting an electrode around your heart. It's really been well received so far. It's exciting to be on the leading edge of developing those kinds of things. But that's
right, and it's plastic. It's plastic. If it's not plastic, it's manufacturing, and that's what's key. Let's jump to that almost last slide here. What we're looking at, applications like we talked about earlier. Making those parts, high volume parts. You've got a 80 cavity tool, 100 cavity tool, whatever it may be. I'm probably misquoting, cavitation. If you do the math, I might have, okay, that's not an even number, and somebody's going to pick at that, but that's okay, because, it is what it is. But, the key is, okay, you've got to make all those parts. Now they're coming off, you pick them off a robot, they're on a runner. Okay, how do you get them off the runner? So now you've got all different kind of applications. Food and beverage, like, you look at the blow molding bottles. You've got our bottles here. Cheers to those who are holding a vodka bottle. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, sorry, Mark, but those are made out of plastic. So
I do know what I put in mine.
I thought I smelled something, but no, it's just no. But it's just those things. You just, in everyday life, you just have to look around, just take a step back, and everything. Medical, consumer products, automotive. The cup holders, and electronics. Hey, one of the largest plastic molders in the world make those little square blocks that people build stuff with. It is what it is, and just look at all the different colors and all those, and the processes that go through that, so that you don't have splay or whatever, different problems in your process. It all takes people. And people are important to manufacturing, and that's why we here at Bales helped. We were hoping to get Mark here, and we did, to do this, National Manufacturing Day webinar, just to kind of give you an overview. Nothing really geared towards the Bales logo. Bales, yeah, we plate and polish here, and we're part of manufacturing, and we're going to leave it at that today. And if you have any other questions, at the end of the slides, you will be able to, Mark will throw out his email. My email will be on there. But moving on to the last slide, I believe. Oh, sorry. Second to last slide. I was corrected.
So when we're talking about manufacturing, we're talking about devices, we're talking about design, we're talking about materials, we're talking about processes. And inside that area of process, we're talking about a couple of different trees. You talk about the process technology itself, earlier injection molding, extrusion, blow molding, additive manufacturing. But we're also talking about subsets in there, where these skills in understanding how they tie together and how they stand alone are important. Mold setup, plastics extrusion, molding process itself, cooling, how to get the parts out, post processing, parts handling. We talk about runners and we talk about some of the other attributes, but I'll tell you what, so many today high volume applications, and there are billions with a B, billions of bottles and closures made in the United States every day for water and all of the other sports beverages that we drink, as well as the carbonated beverages that we drink. Billions. So all of these are very high speed processes. When I was in the factories working with my clients, the molds would open on 7 to 12-second cycles, and it would be a cascade of parts coming off the mold. There was a molder that would make these parts on a compression molding system. Little different technology. It sounded like a 50 caliber machine gun going off.
Oh, sure. It's loud.
But they were coming off at that rate. They were coming off at hundreds of parts per second coming off that machine. All of these require manufacturing technology. All of them require people with an interest to look at it. And I encourage anybody who is looking at a career a career period to consider manufacturing as well as all of your other career interests to go down the path. We would love to come into your schools as Plastivan. I can be reached at mwolverton, MWOLVERTON at 4spe.org. You can find us at www.plastivan.org. We'd be happy to work with you and your teachers to address any interest that you have for your children, nieces, nephews, and grandkids in setting up understanding plastics technology and opportunities in the plastics manufacturing world.
That's perfect. Let's move to that last slide and we'll wrap this up. Just a little, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Rich W. at Bales USA, or my colleague, Rich O'Brien, who is rich at balesusa.com. Or our website is loaded with educational videos explaining our processes and things like that at balesusa.com. We kind of geared this manufacturing towards plastics. Plastics is everywhere, but remember, it's how we dispose of these, how the environment's going to continue on, and we need to be diligent on what we do there. With that being said, is there any questions from the audience?
As far as compensation for working in that industry, it's very competitive, and maybe we should just touch on that.
You mean the salary?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that the millennials that are out there, I'll just make a tidbit. Not so much manufacturing, but my oldest son tells me, in order to make more money, you got to leave companies. It's I hate to say it, but unfortunately, that's kind of the wave that's out there. For me, I started a career at a plastic manufacturing company. I honestly thought I was going to retire there, but just like everybody, and like I explained, the path takes you in different directions. Manufacturing, you could start out, just pushing a broom, you can make a good buck. I would agree. I could say that myself and Mark, and we're making a decent living in the plastic industry. To tie it into an exact number, I mean, it's hard to say because everywhere is different. But nowadays, you're starting at a decent wage to get started. You don't have to, but then again, McDonald's is making a decent wage now too. But it's definitely, you have a larger opportunity once you get in the door somewhere, and especially if it's a family-owned company or a company that cares about their employees, they're going to guide you in the right direction to make you help you earn that decent living. So I'll take this from our owner, Stacy Bales. She said in a meeting the other day, I just want to see everybody here make a decent living, be able to buy nice cars, be able to live in decent houses, and it's important to know that from the management team that you work for, and people that care about their employees, is that if you find that right fit, run with it.
Absolutely. I changed employers several times in my career, and all but one of them were involuntary as a result of business change of directions for the business. The first shift I made was voluntary. I was going to chase an executive path, and I didn't realize how treacherous that executive path could be. But I've had a great career in manufacturing and manufacturing support. I recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, I've been here at Bales for 27 years, and I came in, doing the polishing, and I've gotten to move around throughout the company, and it really is fascinating to see all the different things that come in our shop. Everything made out of plastic. You wouldn't believe how many things there are, and every day it's a new project. It never gets stale. Am I right, folks? I mean, it's
Never
always
gets stale, and you guys at Bales are really, really fortunate that you're not just dealing with plastics all the time. You're dealing with other devices that may need some special surface treatments or polishing or whatever kinds of things are required here. So you get back in the factory, the mix of stuff is fabulous. It's really great.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Quick one before we go. Did we ever figure out the sound for the video?
I think that'll be fixed once we try and send the video out.
Okay,
we'll
that's
work
fine.
with the technical team to see what we can do there.
Okay, but it looks like we may be throwing it out there now, and then we'll end it.
Here we go.
Yeah, I hear sound now.
I love that I'm always busy. It's always like a hands-on job, and the family atmosphere.
I enjoy the fact that there is minimal supervision. I work alone. I do a good job. I don't have my boss constantly on me.
It's a problem-solving job, and there's a different solution for each thing you do. Multiple solutions.
I like the challenge, and I like trying to make something that looked old nice and beautiful.
Right now, I think is knowing and learning all the new products that come in, especially all the metals. I'm not used to that right now. The different departments like nickel and chrome and blasting and masking.
Okay.
And I guess we have a lot of pieces and parts that come in. So they could be small or they could be really big and heavy. So dealing with those things is probably.
So every day is different.
Yeah, everything is different.
Building the anodes, because you have all sorts of different aspects that you have to brainstorm, and wires go in different spots, and you have to fabricate frames for them.
Manufacturing is you don't realize what the parts that come in are what you deal with, every little things every day. They could be for a car, they could be for a grocery store, they could be like a little pen. We deal with those things in manufacturing, and this is always going to be part of it. It's part of America, USA. It's manufacturing is part of our really big, huge industry, in this country, and being part of that, it's just going to keep on growing and growing, and yeah, I mean that's. I mean, I like manufacturing. I'm pretty new to it, but it's just learning about it every day. It's really interesting.
I think it's very challenging, especially our plant here. We got young kids coming in learning how to do nickel, learning how to do polish, learning how to do chrome. I think it's very challenging, and we are a small family business here, so that's a plus too. Everybody knows everybody.
It opens a lot of avenues. You can go into chemistry, you can go into chrome plating, nickel plating, polishing, a lot of different avenues you can go down.
All right, perfect. Well, if there's no questions, I guess we'll wrap this up. I want to thank everybody who is on today or who sees this later on their streaming avenues. Thank you, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you for hosting this, Rich.
Thanks for coming out, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Take care, folks. Thank you.